I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Zajac?
Here.
Ms. Renee?
Here.
Mr. Wardell?
Here.
Mr. Kosis? Here. Mrs. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Calhoun?
Here.
Mayor Brown?
Here. I notice Crimes Chapter 231, Public Law 1975 has been satisfied by the publication of said notice in the Asbury Park Press and Coaster and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Everybody please join me in flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business communications is June 10th council workshop meeting minutes. Council pleasure. Received and filed by Mr. Wardell.
Second.
Second by Ms. Renee. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Thank you. June 10th council meeting minutes. What's the council's pleasure? Receive and file. Receive and file, Mr. Calhoun. Second by Mr. Kosis. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you. June 24th council meeting minutes. What's council's pleasure?
Received and filed.
Received and filed by Ms. Renee. Second. Second by Mr. Zajac. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you. July 8th council meeting minutes. Council's pleasure. Received and filed by Mr. Kosis.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you. We have the June 2019 Neptune City Police Report.
Received and filed.
Received and filed by Ms. Renee. Second by Mr. Wardell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Received. Thank you. July 2019 Neptune City Police Report.
Received and filed.
Received and filed by Ms. Renee. Second by Mr. Kosis. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you. Now we have a presentation tonight from Stuart Weiser from ARH. He's going to make a presentation. So tonight, just so that the public's aware, Mr. Weiser is going to do a presentation to the governing body. This is not a Q&A from the audience at this point. This is a presentation to the governing body. As myself, I know I have not heard this presentation. I'm not familiar with it. I know some of the governing body have been very privy to this information. I myself have not, and I think other council members haven't heard it, so it's our first time hearing the presentation. There'll be other opportunities in the future for the residents to be heard. So, thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Weiser up for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. So we have submitted two proposals to the governing body for consideration, both having to do with the revitalization of the borough. The concept for these germinated from the meeting we had a number of months by now back, where we discussed the Block 75 area. There was the proposal to do the storage, the self-storage at the abandoned Two Guys site. You as the governing body, I guess through Mr. Russell, asked me to do a planning analysis of that. I did that. I was here. I made a presentation. I made a report. And it occurred to me in doing the research for that there were a number of opportunities for the borough to effectuate some revitalization that had been long planned, others that may be opportunities that might pop up. So I submitted two proposals in order to set the table to do that. Both were dated July 3rd, and I'll take them in turn. There is some overlap of these, so I'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but if I miss something, please ask me and I will be happy to go over it. The first one, and these are in no particular order, but the first one is a proposal to do what is known as a preliminary investigation or a study to determine whether or not the entire borough or any parts of the borough qualify under the state statute for designation as an area in need of rehabilitation. What that does is provides the borough with a number of tools to address issues related to zoning and other, bring to bear other pro-development elements that are allowed under the plan, under the designation, to help smooth or to help facilitate development in different areas of town. The way this concept would work is that we would go through and do a study. There are a number of criteria that are mandated by the state. That criteria, so that we would do a study, we would determine what criteria, if any section of the borough satisfies. And from there, we would make a recommendation to the planning board that these areas, and it could be one small area, or it could be as small as a couple of properties, it could be as large as the entire municipality, whether it qualifies as for designation as an area in need of rehabilitation. From there, a plan is developed as to how those conditions would be remedied. They can be as grandiose or as mundane as you as policymakers seek, or as you wish, but the idea would be to facilitate rehabilitation and small R redevelopment or revitalization for a particular area. The benefits here are streamlining the development process, tailor zoning to a specific project, negotiating with a developer to have that specific project come into being, and it also allows short-term, I think it's 5-year tax abatement. Okay? It does not allow condemnation of private property for redevelopment purposes. Under the rehabilitation law, you does not confer upon the municipality with that power. The second proposal is a little more targeted. Let me take a step back. So once an area has been declared to be in need of rehabilitation, the next step is to prepare, it's called a redevelopment plan, but it's not redevelopment, it's rehabilitation, but that's what the state law calls it. It's a redevelopment plan, so you can pick off different problem areas in town or areas of opportunity and address them. So you could have one redevelopment plan, you could have many redevelopment plans, and it provides somewhat of a nimble way to address specific problems or specific opportunities. The next process, the second proposal, is to declare, when we were doing our study for the Block 75 area, we came across your master plan, which had referenced for a number of master plan cycles a town center in the 35 3rd Avenue area. What we did, we took a look at the area and we crafted a proposal that would declare that area to be in need of redevelopment, which has all the same powers as the rehabilitation area as I just spoke about, and it allows for a longer term, up to 30-year tax abatement. Now, there are two methods to do a redevelopment process. One method would permit eminent domain, the condemnation of private property for a project. The other avenue would not permit that. Used to be that if you did rehabilitation, you didn't have eminent domain. If you did redevelopment, you did. The state in 2013 amended the law, so you have that option as to whether you want to pursue redevelopment or not under redevelopment designation. We have, as part of this proposal, outlined an area, there's a map in the back, that we think might be a likely candidate for the redevelopment. There's no magic to that, and if you want to add or subtract from that, you certainly can. But this proposal actually takes it a step further because we have somewhat of a defined area, and we know from the master plan what the borough wants to do. So this proposal includes taking you through the designation process, and then it also includes the preparation of a redevelopment plan for the area. And the plan would be geared towards a town center, which is what you talked about, or your predecessors, I guess, have talked about as part of the master planning process. Both of these concepts would be multi-year processes. We believe if you choose one or the other, or both, you could do both if you so chose. We could have the investigation done by the end of the year, and then we would begin the process of the crafting the redevelopment plan in 2020. The investigations are really an existing conditions analysis, so they don't really, not that we wouldn't be happy to meet with stakeholders, but they are, does the area qualify? So it's more of a planning analysis than setting policy, although you will have set policy to put this in motion. The plan itself is where the large scale and multiple interactions with stakeholders and citizens would be more appropriate. So I don't know whether I've answered all of your questions. I've probably raised more than I've answered, but those are the sum and substances of the two proposals, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody from council have a question? Swen?
I do. So have you done rehabilitation and redevelopment plans for any towns before?
Many, many times.
And what are some of those towns?
I did Atlantic City, I did Pleasantville, New Jersey, I did Wildwood and North Wildwood, I did Robbinsville, I did Rutherford, I did Lakewood, and there are probably a number more. I don't have them off the top of my head. I've done many, many, many of these processes.
And I don't understand why you would propose both at the same time. It doesn't make any sense to me why we would go forward with the redevelopment plan when the rehabilitation plan hasn't been completed yet.
I'm giving you the options. If you wanted to do something borough-wide, we gave you the option as part of the rehabilitation process. If you wanted to focus just on the town center area, what I'm calling loosely the town center area, we gave you a proposal to do that. As I said, you could choose either one of these. There are benefits of one versus the other, most notably the long-term tax abatement. So that's why we recommended for the town center area, because it's more defined in our minds. So that's why we recommended that for that area. You could do either or both.
When you met with council members Calhoun and Wardell and I in the economic development meeting, you had mentioned the opportunity for grants.
There are grants that are available at the state level. They change all the time, so I couldn't give you specifically what they are right now. There are grants available for both rehabilitation areas and redevelopment areas. The grants for redevelopment, and all of these grants are competitive. So if you have a rehabilitation area, you get points towards your application. If you have a redevelopment area, generally you get more points towards that application. There is also the ability, it's not a grant program per se, but there are the federal opportunity zones which direct, that are designed to direct private sector investment into opportunity zone areas. The entire borough of Neptune City is an opportunity zone. So there is the ability, once a plan is put in place, to seek developers, redevelopers, to come in and invest. We have a number of people that we've been talking to on the private side that are interested in this investment vehicle. It's basically like a hedge fund for developers. Create jobs, create an investment. If you keep your money in a project for a certain amount of time, you get tax credits. So those kind of things, they are not municipal outlays, but they are another avenue to entice development into an area that may not otherwise see it left solely to the private sector.
But we have to have the plan in order to.
The
apply.
plan, yes.
Can we do it with just the rehabilitation plan, or does it have to be rebuilt?
It is my understanding, and the rules are still being developed, but it is my understanding that both, or either would be permissible for an opportunity zone investment. I would defer to the legal community to clarify that. That is my understanding. I'm not 100% sure.
So initially, inevitably though, we would be either looking to do rehabilitation or redevelopment plan on the majority of privately owned business.
Yes.
So it's people who own businesses that we would determine as a governing body that could be better, would be a better source of revenue for the borough. And if we determine that, we could, that would fall under maybe one or the other.
Yes, and let me take that a step further, it's not only, yes, it would be better for the borough, if you determine that, but it also could be something where you entice a specific type of business or type of improvement, that you're not getting now. And it's entirely possible, and I've actually done these, where the borough itself, or the municipality itself, as a corporate entity is not better off, but there are public policy benefits in terms of jobs, in terms of social service issues, in terms of any number of benefits that could be brought in, that you may not see it on your bottom line. I mean, you could, but you may not see it on your bottom line, but it's still a benefit to the town. It's still a good for the town.
At the end of the day, that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, it'll be something could be better for the town, maybe not necessarily better for that private property owner. Under with redevelopment, it doesn't always include. At the end of the day, it doesn't always include the property owner.
It depends on how. I mean, frankly, it depends on how the dominoes fall and what the project is, how the project is proposed, and whether there is a role for the current property owner in that property, and whether the private developer and the current property owner can strike a reasonable deal.
Right.
So yes, you're absolutely right.
I'm familiar with, we've done 2 redevelopment projects over the past 10 years, and the 2 that we've been successful with were property owners that wanted to be a partner in the borough. There was a time when there was a redevelopment area that was designated redevelopment, and I don't think that anybody else was really here yet, but it did not go very well. It did not go well for the town. Did not go well for the businesses. Several actually went out of business, fighting the redevelopment. And there's some that spent thousands and thousands of dollars because, you know, although the governing body of the municipality at the current time felt that that would be better for the town, they really wanted to keep their family businesses. So they fought and spent, I know some spent close to $60,000 to fight. And 4 years of that, 4 years later, when it got to the county in front of the judge, because everything has to be final anyway.
No, actually, if somebody doesn't challenge it, it's a local decision. If obviously if it goes to court, it goes to court,
Well,
and then all the.
if it goes to court, and
Yeah.
somebody has to make, and that's what happened with that area, and the bar lost. You know, the judge would not approve the area being redeveloped. So, I mean, and that was years and years we spent trying to do that, and, you know, that was the whole Steiner Avenue redevelopment, and, you know, it was extremely expensive to the residents of the borough. A lot of tax dollars were spent, and, you know,
Humbly, I say you didn't have the right planner, but.
well, you know, I understood what the problem was. They, you know, we had businesses that really wanted to keep the bottom line is we had family businesses that wanted to keep their businesses, and they, you know, they fought that redevelopment. So that's a potential, and it's, you know, this is all on the back of the taxpayer, if that happens, correct?
To the extent that the town has to pay for attorneys and the processes, yeah, obviously you get your money from the taxpayer. What I try to do in all of my plans is to work with, to the extent we can. I mean, if you have good businesses there, we try to work with them, because nobody wants to throw businesses out. I mean, that's especially long-term businesses that are the fabric of the community. Nobody wants to see them hurt, and nobody wants to see them leave. Some may choose to leave, and there are some businesses that you may want out. And I don't know what they would be right now, but conceivably, I've been in one town had a drive-through liquor store that was just, there was all kinds of. Nah. But you know, it was causing nothing but accidents. The town wanted it out. I mean, so it depends on what you guys have policy. I execute the policy. If you guys make a particular decision as the governing body, we'll try our best to make that happen as part of our assignment.
So basically, there's two different things. First, there's a rehabilitation plan, which designates area in need of redevelopment, revitalization, versus the redevelopment plan, which specifies.
So under both proposals, it's a multi-step process. And the process, without getting too much into the weeds, the process is generally the same. You designate the planning board to do a study. The planning board designates us to do the study on their behalf. We go away for a little while, we do a report that, you know, is probably a small Manhattan phone book. We come back, we say, yes, under these criteria, and we'll presume that it qualifies. Under these criteria, whether it's redevelopment or rehabilitation, we believe that this area qualifies. Perhaps this section doesn't qualify. Whatever wherever the data takes us. That then goes to the planning board. The planning board has a public hearing, does a review and recommendation to the governing body. The governing body makes a designation. Then the governing body directs us to do a redevelopment plan for whichever part of the area you want. We go away for a little while, we prepare the plan, we work with you to prepare the plan, come back, prepare the plan, or present the plan to the planning board, at a public hearing. Planning board makes a recommendation to you as a governing body. The redevelopment plan gets adopted by ordinance. Then we look for people to effectuate it. We look for development.
So under the rehab plan though, if we're not using eminent domain at all, and we're clear on that, isn't it more of a partnership with the landowner? This is we see this opportunity from the borough planner, what can we do? And they can say, no, I love my, whatever it is. I mean,
Ideally.
it sounded to me that if we're not doing eminent domain, we're not forcing anybody into anything or anybody out. We're showing them that in this town, we have an opportunity here where you are. So, do you want to work with us?
That's exactly right, and I would argue that under either process, it is a partnership.
Okay.
But be that as it may, if you do a condemnation redevelopment process and Mrs. Jablonski doesn't want to leave her property, you can force her out. If you're doing a rehabilitation area or a non-condemnation redevelopment area, then you can't use eminent domain to force somebody out, and you have to then work with that person to make improvements. Maybe you can make land available over here where they can move. I've done this before where there's a resource over here, they're better off over here, and then this land over here is better off for the larger project. And you can work out those issues. So you're right, it's only under a condemnation redevelopment area can you use eminent domain. You have to work with the property owners in the other two categories.
And we would vote for that in the beginning, right? So it couldn't all of a sudden, a year down the road, all of a sudden we do try to take something.
If you vote, that's a very good question. If you pursue a rehabilitation area designation, the law doesn't give you eminent domain powers.
Okay.
So that it's a non-issue.
Okay.
If you decide to do redevelopment, you're right, at the very beginning, you have to say, and I try to put it in all of my resolutions and all of my documents, that this either is or is not in furtherance of a condemnation or non-condemnation redevelopment process.
Okay.
And that is upfront, and you cannot go halfway. If you choose a non-condemnation process, you can't get halfway through and then change your mind. You gotta go all the way back to the beginning, start all over again with the first resolution, authorizing resolution, and it's all transparency every step through the process.
Does your rehabilitation plan include infrastructure? I thought I saw something about pipes or drainage or.
We put that into the redevelopment proposal.
Redevelopment, not rehab.
Well, because on the rehab proposal, we did not propose to do any specific redevelopment plan,
Okay.
because we don't know what areas you would choose to do. So that would be a second phase, a next year phase. We included it in our proposal for the redevelopment because we had a defined area, and it's our understanding there are certain problems in that area. So if you were to choose a rehabilitation process, and it's some area that, X Street and Y Avenue that we're not familiar with, we would look at everything in that area, and if infrastructure is an issue there, if it floods or if it's old piping or what have you, then yes, we would create a plan that would include that. And that would be with all of your input.
But your rehab plan will not include, either flooding or possible pipe leaks?
It will when it comes for the designation. So it's an existing conditions analysis. If there's flooding there, we'll certainly recognize that.
If that's.
Absolutely, no question about it.
And I thought you said something about environmental.
Yes, if there's environmental contamination, if there's flooding, if
Rehab,
there's,
though, right? Rehab, not redevelopment.
correct, either
So
one,
you would know that from your first
Yes.
report.
Yes.
You'd find these things.
yes. And then how we would address them would come in the redevelopment plan, the next phase.
What happens if you give us a rehab tenant and you have help with and whatever,
You're the boss.
right? So, but at least we know where we may have some issues or wanna focus our stuff, right? This isn't a, once we start this, we can always stop, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I have,
Things are approved like all along the way, so we're not forced to a next step, or we got in too deep and now we're
correct,
out.
correct. At every step of the process, you can pull the reins back and say, stop. You could shift direction. You as the governing body have the power.
And then my last question was, it seemed like we talked a lot about this was going to the land use board. So is only the initial, okay, do it or not, is our approval, and then everything else you do is working with the land use board?
No, so of which way you want to do the designation. For the designation, there is a public hearing before the planning board. And I say planning board because it's the land use board acting under its powers as the planning board.
Right.
So they then review it, make a finding of fact and a recommendation to you. You then pull the trigger, for lack of a better term. You then take the formal action for the designation. For the redevelopment plan, they review it, they provide you with a recommendation, and then you adopt the plan by ordinance. Now, the law also permits you to adopt a designation or a plan that is not in conformance with the recommendation from the planning board if you put your reasons on the record. So you as the governing body have the ultimate power to do everything legal under these designations.
But we partner with land use, and we look for their recommendations.
Yes,
as-
yes, they are your subordinates for this, and they provide recommendations.
Thank you.
I didn't mean, that sounds demeaning, and I didn't mean it to be that way, but that's effectively what happens, as am I.
Mr. West, so as we keep talking about, areas of redevelopment or rehabilitation, it is areas, you can't spot redevelopment.
Actually, you can. You, under the redevelopment law, you are permitted to what otherwise would be spot zoning.
Yeah.
Yes. You could find one lot that has an issue you want to address, and as long as it qualifies under the criteria for designation, and you wish to pursue that, you absolutely could do that.
And if you did that under rehabilitation, because I know you used to not be able to do that, but.
No, actually, from the very beginning, the redevelopment law, the body of law under the redevelopment statute allowed you to do that,
To just pick any.
as long as it qualified.
parcel, If it qualified.
Yeah,
Okay.
Under the redevelopment plan.
Okay.
yeah.
And then, again, that would also be if the owner of that property is willing to go into a partnership.
Unless you decide that for that property, you want to have the power of eminent domain, and then you would start that process that way. Or you would pursue that process that way.
So that would be the advantage of doing both plans at the same time. Because there could be areas that are just rehabilitation, but then there's areas that under redevelopment, that's why
Well-
condemnation exists.
Yes, yes.
It's there, I mean, it exists for that.
It exists for a
that
reason, and I can give you horror stories. There
I've seen
is,
some.
there are valid reasons to use it. There are valid reasons when it should not be used. And every situation is unique and needs to be discussed in and of itself. And let me also take that a step further. Should you decide to pursue a condemnation redevelopment area designation for the town center area, that doesn't mean you have to use eminent domain. It means that at some point in the future, if you have a particular property owner that is being recalcitrant, that owns a postage stamp and wants $2,000 a square foot to buy them out, a vacant lot that isn't helping anything, you can choose at that time to pursue condemnation. at once again, at every step in the way, the choke points or the decision points are yours to proceed or not proceed.
So, under your, where we are right now is whether we decide whether we have basically the entire town reviewed, you know, and see any area that might be in town, or a particular property that could fall under either one.
Well, no, the way we've crafted the proposal is that we would look at the entire town for a rehabilitation area designation. But for the redevelopment designation, we've only looked at, the town center area. If you were to look at the entire town for redevelopment
No,
without
that's
targeting.
that's what I mean, that's what I was saying, is by doing both, but you would do, the whole town would be in the rehabilitation, that you would look at the whole town to see where we are.
And the town center would be redeveloping, if that's the way you wanted to pursue. Trying the law does not specifically say you can do an entire town in need of redevelopment. And even if you wanted to, that would be a very expensive and very time-consuming process. And I dare say it would collapse under its own weight. It's just too voluminous.
Anyone else have questions? Just one thing. So I'm just a little interested exactly what the criteria would be that would delineate an area, whether it needs either rehabilitation or redevelopment and whatnot. So if you look at a parcel of property, you know, is there a certain criteria? Is there like a checklist before
There is actually, and they're listed in the proposal. So for rehabilitation, it's any of the following. A significant portion of the structures are deteriorated or substandard. Housing stock is at least 50 years old. There is a pattern of vacancy, abandonment, or underutilization of properties. There is a persistent arrearage of property tax payments. Environmental contamination is discouraging improvements. The majority of the water and sewer infrastructure is at least 50 years old and in need of substantial. Now, it could be that you have a certain section of town that qualifies under number 2, and another section of town that qualifies for any section of town, and the layering of all of them would be the entirety of the municipality. For redevelopment, this is the other proposal. Bear with me, I'm sorry.
Redevelopment was a blighted area.
It's more, okay, here it is, it's on page 2, and it's that plus a little bit. So it's the generality of buildings are substandard, unsafe, unsanitary, dilapidated, or obsolescent, effectively blighted. There is a discontinuance of the use of buildings previously used for commercial, manufacturing, or industrial purposes. There is land that is owned by the municipality, the county, a local housing authority, redevelopment agency, or unimproved vacant land that has remained so for a period of 10 years, and that by reason of its location, remoteness, lack of access, topography, or nature of the soil isn't likely to be developed absent the redevelopment process. Areas with buildings or improvements which, by reason of dilapidation, obsolescence, overcrowding, faulty arrangement or design, lack of ventilation, excessive land coverage, deleterious land use, et cetera, things like that. A growing lack or total lack of proper utilization caused by the condition of title, diverse ownership, or other similar conditions. There's an area of 5 acres where there's been some kind of natural or man-made disaster, probably doesn't apply. Are we in an urban enterprise? an area in the urban enterprise zone would qualify that area for this zone only for tax abatement, not for replanning purposes. And then the area has to be consistent with state smart growth rules or regulations. So it is blight, but it's a little more than blight, and the law sort of took that original blight definition and molded it a little bit to make it more flexible for municipalities.
So the property that the borough, has taken over, known previously as East Coast Ice.
Yes.
So that area would fall under those guidelines.
It would, and that's actually a very good question. So normally, under the law, if you have a piece of land that you want to see developed, or you want to just get rid of, put it back on the tax rolls, you would have to auction that off to the highest bidder. Under the either redevelopment or the rehabilitation process, you can negotiate with a prospective purchaser just like you would if you were a private individual. Now, you can go to auction if you want, but you're not required to by law. So if you have a specific use on a particular piece of property that is borough-owned, you can, if you choose, seek a specific developer for that land to do a specific project without going out to bidding. And then you can tailor, under the redevelopment plan, the specific land use controls so they have, when they get to the planning board, they have the plan that is absolutely in line with what you want.
So if we come to the point where we decide, okay, this is probably a good idea, like, we would want to have public input as to what the public would like to have in these different areas. So, have you done this in the past where you've had town hall meetings?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, I think I might have said this earlier, that comes when you're crafting the plan, not so much when you're doing the designation.
Okay.
Because designation really is an existing conditions analysis. It doesn't lend itself to public input. There will be public hearings as part of that, both before the planning board and the governing body, but the real meaningful interaction comes when we're deciding what this particular area wants to be. And that's where we would have the interaction with the stakeholders, the public, whoever you as the governing body thinks is appropriate.
So we would need that rehabilitation plan first in order to move forward.
No, not necessarily. We could sit down and start a conversation with what do you want to see in a particular area and what do you want to see it look like, and we can have some discussions to gauge the interest of the public in anything they want. You know, throw it up against the wall, see what sticks. We would then use that input to craft the first draft of a plan, and then come back and work with you, find those concepts into a true redevelopment plan.
Following this criteria, there shouldn't be a reason to affect active businesses that are successful at taking on homes. We can target vacant buildings and lots.
Exactly. I mean, if there is a building that's, or a use, whatever that use is, that's thriving, why would you want to do anything to disturb that?
You had mentioned a moment ago the urban enterprise zone, and there's been some discussion in the past as to whether or not it's been clearly defined by the state and local governments as to what it actually is and what benefit or not, or lack thereof it does. In your experience, how have you worked with it in the past? Does it benefit? Is it, you know, give me an overview of what you found.
I worked with off the top of my head, 3 towns that had urban enterprise zones. Now, this was before the program itself was sort of dismantled, and I understand that the current governor, the current administration is trying to bring it back, but I don't know what form that is going to take right now. But in the past, what we have done is, first of all, the urban enterprise zones in 2 of the towns, I think, actually paid for the planning work that would be the subject of this proposal through their second generation funds. But the urban enterprise zone program, because you can do tax abatement under the redevelopment under redevelopment plan. And because there are benefits to businesses, if they hire local people within the zone, and then there's the sales tax benefit, we have been rather successful in bringing people in to these areas, businesses into these areas, using those incentives. Where they are now and what they are likely to look like into the future, we can't know. Because the state is still trying to recraft those programs.
So as of now, it's not really a factor to consider one way or the other?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's, if it comes back, it's likely to be beneficial, but when that's gonna happen and how it's gonna be beneficial, we can't know. So I think you're right. As a practical matter, it's not there yet.
Yeah, we've never been an urban enterprise zone.
Oh,
We're not urban enterprise zone. We've never been an urban enterprise zone.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard earlier too.
Opportunity, economic opportunity.
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, that's the other, okay.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That, and well, and that is because, that is going to be,
Starting.
yes, that is starting, that is going to be, I was under the impression you were an urban enterprise zone as well. Again, I've got a couple of people, sort of Wall Street types who have left Wall Street and opened up hedge funds just to take advantage of this. And I would ask them, at some point, I would ask them when we're ready to take a look at Neptune City and see whether there's an opportunity for what they want to do here. But it's premature at this point.
Right, but you're exactly what you said though, right, is when you do this and you're looking for investors, although the council and the community can have input, at the end of the day, the investors have a majority of the say. They're the ones that are gonna fund something.
Well,
And they're not gonna do something just because we want it. They're gonna do it because they wanna make money.
Well,
That's what they're coming here for.
let me flip that though. If they're coming in to do something that you don't want to see happen, you don't let them in. You don't let them in the
No, I
door.
understand that. Well, but if they wanna do, they're coming, they need to make money. That's what they're,
Yes.
at the end of the day, so they have to have say in what, they're here to make money,
And
which is okay, that's what they do.
I would not bring to you somebody, we talked about a public-private partnership earlier. Obviously, people come in on their own and they can do whatever they can present themselves however they wanted. I would not bring anybody to you who wasn't somebody who I have confidence in would do the right thing by the township, or by the borough, while they're making money.
We actually, as a governing body, can't really talk to developers to come in until we have a plan, is that correct?
There is case law that says that you cannot negotiate with a potential redeveloper until a redevelopment plan is adopted.
Redevelopment or rehabilitation?
Either one. The term is a redevelopment plan regardless of which mechanism you use. They didn't differentiate, that's the term the state uses. So until that plan is adopted, under law, you are not permitted to negotiate. Now, what negotiating means has been the subject of ongoing litigation. And the case that I was involved in, the judge basically said you can go up to this bright line, but don't step over the line. Gauging somebody's interest was deemed at the time to be permissible. Rolling your sleeves up and negotiating an agreement was stepping over the line.
You can do it, as long as the plan is in place, you can have an agreement.
That's exactly right.
That's why they're in that order.
That's exactly right. So
Otherwise, it's basically a backdoor deal.
you're absolutely right. And the one thing I don't think I touched on, and I'm probably taking up way too much of your time, but under both of these scenarios, you, as the governing body, becomes what's known as the redevelopment entity, also known as the redevelopment agency. After the plan is adopted and we find a redeveloper and we negotiate with that redeveloper, you enter into a redevelopment agreement, which lays out the rights and responsibilities of both sides for the project that we're talking about, whatever that project is. So they're locked in doing things that you want. You're locked in doing things that they might want. And if you can't come to a mutual agreement, and this is sort of your point, Mayor, if you can't come to a mutual agreement as to what they're gonna do for you and what you're gonna do for them, you don't do a deal, and you go on to the next guy.
That's exactly what we did here. Our first redevelopment plan was Steiner Avenue, and the first redeveloper was not doing what we wanted. And what their proposal was not what our vision was. They moved on, we got a new developer, and it's exactly what we envisioned, which is where the old Charlene Hotel is, where the Keys Commons townhomes are.
I've been involved just recently with two in Robbinsville, where there was one very well-heeled potential redeveloper who wanted to do something, and it was just totally overbuilt for what the community wanted. And the taxes were gonna be great, and that mayor said, see it. We're gonna go with somebody else. And that's what they did. Actually, that happened twice. So, throughout all of this, you guys retain control.
At the top of your presentation, you talked about grant money.
Yes.
Where does that fit into this process, rehab, redevelopment? Where's it from? Why would we get a grant from that? What is that?
The one, first of all, at any point in time, Trenton has a pot of grants that are available through multiple different agencies for different functions. So we were talking about infrastructure. It is possible that you could use grant monies for your road program and other infrastructure monies in a targeted rehabilitation area or redevelopment area in conjunction with whatever project a developer comes in and wants to do. So those are kinds of things. You become creative with what you can find new grants that you wouldn't ordinarily get if it's something that you have an opportunity for, and you can become creative with the grants that you normally get, assuming you normally get them, to put towards a project that allows that project to go forward. And I don't know whether you have a grants firm as part of, or somebody on staff to do that. We don't do that, but we can send a couple of people your way to interview if that's something that you want to pursue.
So all these additional costs of the development plans and grant writing, if every building or lot becomes a redevelopment plan, we have the ability to have the developer who may be interested pay for that cost, and we're no longer needing those additional, this is our first step. So if we
Correct.
open for floodgates, if people have ideas and want to do things, they can also bring the money to do that, right?
What I typically do, and the money part is a little different with every project, but what I recommend to my clients is that we build into the process that once you get the redeveloper under an agreement, they reimburse the planning costs to you. So let's just say we get, and give me a redeveloper's name, Charbel Development Company is a redeveloper that I know. If they come in and you are able to execute a redevelopment agreement, one of the negotiating points would be, okay, we've spent whatever the number is to get us here so far, you guys reimburse us for that. Oh, and by the way, you're gonna post an escrow that's gonna cover our costs as we move into the future.
Is that typical though?
Yeah.
It's exactly what we just did with the rest. We did a redevelopment plan. Once we had a plan in place, we then went into an agreement, and the redeveloper put money in escrow. They also, they pay fees from that, every meeting that the attorney and the planner has to come to, it gets paid for out of that escrow.
I typically have the attorney run his own deal, but I take care of myself.
Also, you know, and then you can negotiate other things into that agreement as to, items back to the borough, such as contributions to, like we did to the fire department, police department. There's in the existing redevelopment plan right now, police department, fire department, public works, and first aid department. They're all being, there's something in there, and it's all built in the timelines of as the redevelopment goes along. We don't make them give you all that money up front, but this is a very lengthy,
It is a lengthy process. Now, I will tell you, and those concessions, for lack of a better term, are only limited by your creativity and what you can agree with. I'll give you an example. I did the redevelopment project that eventually became the Borgata down in Atlantic City. We negotiated that they had to hire, was Mirage at the time, they had to hire 2,000 Atlantic City residents as part of that project. And in order to do that, we negotiated in that they had to train 5,000 Atlantic City residents in order to be able to hire 2,000. Now, obviously, the scale of that is not what we're talking about here. But the point is that you're only limited by your imagination and what the potential redeveloper will agree to.
We don't have that.
We have a,
Well, I thank you. I'm sure we will, we'll be talking more about this in the very near future. If anybody else doesn't have any questions, we'll let Mr. Weiser go, and we could continue on with our regular meeting.
thank you all. If you have any questions,
Forward to Brian.
funnel them to Brian, and if you want me to come back up again and we can chat about this further, you know, I'm at your disposal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's all right. That's what we need to know. Everybody's got questions.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to go to public participation on agenda items. Does anybody from the public wish to be heard on any of the agenda items?
Just have a question.
Is it about the agenda items?
I believe it is.
Which agenda item? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Patty Scott, 220 West Spring. Everything I read, and I may have missed this along the line, says Windsor Avenue. Isn't it Windsor Court, or have we changed the name?
No, I think it's Windsor Avenue. I think there's Windsor Avenue and Windsor Court. Windsor Court goes to the side, there's two.
One down the side of the first aid home to the river is Windsor Court, am I correct?
Isn't Windsor Court the short street?
Windsor Court is the, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cul-de-sac.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right.
Just that easy, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else wish to be heard on any agenda items? Seeing none, I will ask our President of Board of Ed to please stand, and I know he has something to.
Okay, President of Board of Ed, Neptune City, Anthony Cicino. Basically, I want to let people know we have a new interim CSA, Mr. Dr. Ralph Ferry, who has started. We have a new interim BA. Unfortunately, I don't know her last name. Her name is Yvonne. We have also a new board member that took Madeline Tallman's spot. Her name is Sherry Zanny. Okay, she's invited to Board of Ed meetings when they can make it. School starts, first full day of school September 5th, and everything's moving right along.
Oh, Mr. Cicino, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have another board member here tonight, Mr. Westcott. Thanks for attending. Okay, we have no old business, we'll move right to new business. Resolution 1933, payment of bills. Offered by Ms. Lewis. Second by Mr. Calhoun. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac? Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis? Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted, thank you. Resolution 19134.
Contract with the Monmouth County SPCA Animal Control Services for Trap Neuter Release Program.
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Well. Are there any questions?
Few comments, Mayor. if I could. The Trap and Neuter Release Program is a program that we're entering into here with in conjunction with the Monmouth County SPCA to kind of handle the feral cat issue that is going on here in town. The Monmouth County Chief of SPCA, man named Ross Lecicho, was nice enough to meet with myself and Mr. Russell about a month ago or so to discuss this issue. And his advice to us was to take part in this program. He mentioned other towns had similar issues that we did, towns our size, and how it's actually helped. He says some of the towns, you know, the old method used to be to trap and kill. He said trap and kill used to be the old method. He goes, I'm an animal lover. I'm just completely against that, and nor do I think it works. He goes, it's a myth that works. He goes, you don't have enough people actually go out and trap all the cats that there are, and to kill that many, he's like, you know, A, would be, you know, just a cruel thing to do, and B, it would be ineffective. Usually other cats would just migrate into the territory where you have destroyed the other ones because now there's food in that territory. And so trap new release has a lot of advantages to it as well. Just going off the website here, one of the things to do is it will reduce the population relatively quickly because what they're going to do is trap the kittens as well. There's a lot of kittens. Kittens then will be adopted out for the most part. You're talking like a 97% adoption rate for the kittens and other younger friendly cats because feral cats cannot be rehabilitated. They are wild cats. They cannot be rehabilitated. You can't teach them to be house cats. Like they can't be done. So with this, what you do is you use this trap neuter release program and you stop them from reproducing, is what you do. And this should lower it all down, but it's not an immediate fix. This is kind of a over time. I believe he said it was a 60 to 70% reduction in cats over a 6-period time on average is what you see. So it will take time, you know, for those residents who are very concerned because it stopped just becoming a public nuisance and as they start becoming part of I think a health issue. You know, the cat waste can actually be harmful to your health as well as most animal excrement could be as well. Some of the other advantages, even though the population of cats may not go down right away, I'm sure we've all heard it at some point, or like the howling or the fighting that you hear from cats really, that is the most terrifying sound in the world. Well, that would be reduced because if they're neutered, they're not going to be looking to mate. So therefore, that should be reduced immediately. So that's one of the immediate effects you'll see from a trap and neuter release program. It says here, neuter male cats will mark less often with significantly less odor. So therefore, one of the other things too, I've had several residents say the odor keeps them from being able to go out on their back porch or their front porch because you know that ammonia smell that you get from cat urine can be really powerful smell. One of the things too is when they trap these things, they also are going to immunize it, so it will prevent the spreading of disease as well. So things like rabies won't be spread as quickly as it was before with some of these wild cats here. And it says all in all, you'll see a drop in the nuisance calls for the feral cats. So this was something that really interested me. And so when we had our meeting, myself, Mr. Names, I told him about this program. I think we all agreed it was probably the best way to do it, the most humane way to do it, because nobody wants to see cats being put down or any animals being put down for that fact. One of the other things that Ms. Lecicho, I should say Chief Lecicho, also mentioned to us was the educating the public. The people who are feeding these cats are not doing it from a place of anger. They're really doing it from a good place in their hearts. But I don't think they realize that it's causing a public nuisance. You don't want to punish people for being kind to animals. So he said, what you can do is you can make these people that do that basically be like the caregiver of like a feral colony. Their job would be to kind of monitor the cats. If they new cats are moving, they're supposed to tell the Monmouth County SPCA to kind of help this whole program here. So this way, it kind of educates the people that are feeding can continue to do so, take care of these cats, and also reduce the population at the same time here. So we really saw this as a win-win situation here. So it really is a rather small nominal fee that we're talking about. Nothing's going to break the bank by any means here. I just want to give it my full endorsement. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
So definitely something that for years we've been wanting to do, the no-kill
we went few years ago to the Monmouth County SPCA is because Monmouth County SPCA is a no-kill facility. That's one of the reasons why we changed. So once they never used to offer it as a service to municipalities. Once they did that, we immediately, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we got right on as soon as it was offered, because it's a no-kill. The Associated Humane Society, they are a kill facility. So, thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution passed. Resolution 19-135.
Resolution to close Summit Avenue for a block party.
Would you like to offer that?
So that.
Offered by Mr. Calhoun. I'll second. Mr. Kosis, second by Mr. Kosis. Any questions? Or we like, depends on how you vote. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution 19-136, introduction of ordinance 19-3, bond ordinance providing for the Steiner Avenue pedestrian and ADA improvement appropriating $225,000 and authorizing the issuance of $53,704 bonds or notes of the borough for financing part of the cost thereof.
Somebody like to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Offered by Mrs. Lewis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zajac. Any questions? This was a grant that we had received a while ago. With a lot of these grants, many of them, we have 3 years to actually institute that grant. So some of them, if you looked at the paperwork, the date on it could be a couple years old. When we get these grants, the opportunity's there to get the grant for an area that we need to work on. And again, we don't have to do it immediately, so as not to just completely impact our capital projects funds, and impact the residents. If we can finish something 1 year, get it paid off before we start something else, and that's where we keep our capital projects level. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted. I need a motion to advertise. Motion to advertise?
So offered.
Offered by Mr. Wardell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kosis. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you.
Resolution 19-137, introduction of ordinance 19-4, an ordinance appropriating $36,764 in capital improvement fund for costs and expenses to purchase the listed equipment.
Somebody like to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Offered by Ms. Lewis. Second. Second by Mr. Kosis. Any questions? This resolution, this capital money is this is part of the 2019 municipal taxes. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted. Motion advertised.
So offered.
Offered by Mr. Well.
Second.
Second by Ms. Renee. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Received. Thank you.
Resolution 19-138, amendment to the capital budget. This is adding in the ADA grant into our capital.
Would somebody like to offer that? Offered by Mr. Kosis.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Calhoun. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac? Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted. Thank you.
Resolution 2019-139, appointment of Brian A. Russell, custodian of petty cash.
Somebody like to offer that?
I'll offer that.
Offered by Ms. Lewis. Second. Second by Mr. Wardell. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution's adopted.
Resolution 19-140, shared service agreement with Monmouth County for providing the use of Monmouth County's open public records search system, records information management module.
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee. Seconded by Mr. Zajac. Any questions? We do this one every year?
This is re-up.
So re-up in the shared service. Okay, you said 3-year contract?
I believe so, from the previous one I saw.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution's adopted. Thank you. Executive session. We're not doing it. We don't need it. So should we go to 142?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
I call for a motion to remove resolution 19-141 executive session.
Offered by Mr. Wardell.
Second.
Second by Ms. Renee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, thank you.
Resolution number 2019-142, accepting the resignation of Albert Jardine as full-time tax collector, deputy clerk, assistant to the CFO, and office manager.
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Lewis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Calhoun. Any questions? I'd just like to thank Al for everything he's done. I wish him the best in his future endeavors. I know he'll do well. He's a very bright young man. And as we go down further, I'll thank him for staying on and helping out until we figure out what we're doing. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes, with much regret.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes, with regret.
And Mr. Calhoun?
Yes, with regret and all my best wishes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution 2019-143, approval to hire Scott Samus as special class 3 police officer.
So offered.
We offer that. Ms. Renee offers.
Second.
Mr. Wardell. Any questions? I just make a real quick thing. If those of you who don't know Scott Samus, Scott started his career here in Neptune City. He then went to prosecutor's office, had a great career out there. Scott solved a lot of crimes with Monmouth County. And he was one of the lead detectives on the Milton case of the lady who was murdered here in Neptune City. He was very diligent on that, and I want to thank him for everything and welcome him back to Neptune City. Now he'll be keeping an eye on our kids during the day, so they will be safe at the school. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Resolution 2019-144, resolution approving the submission of a grant application and authorizing the mayor and acting municipal clerk to execute a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the 2020 various roadway improvement projects.
Somebody like to offer that?
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee. Second. Seconded by Mr. Kosis. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis? Yes. Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Resolution number 2019-145, accepting the resignation of Dr. Tamara Tolman as chairperson of the Neptune City Drug Alliance.
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wardell. Any questions?
I would just like to thank Mrs. Tallman for her years of service to the Drug Alliance and all the time that she's committed to it, and just really appreciate that, and I just want to wish her well and good health.
Thank you. It was several years ago, the Drug Alliance had kind of, with some county changes, they made it very difficult, actually the county made it very difficult to be a member of the Drug Alliance, and receive the grants and do the programs. And then, I was able to convince Ms. Stallman to take that challenge on, and she spent quite a few days in Freehold, negotiating, getting us back on track for the drug alliance. She did do an amazing job, and I do wish her also all her best. My professor, now, please, roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac? Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis? Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution appointing Albert Jardine as part-time tax collector and deputy clerk.
Somebody like to offer that? Offered by Mrs. Lewis. Second by Mr. Kosis. Any questions?
I would just like to thank Mr. Jardine for all his time and efforts here, and just to congratulate him with his new opportunity that he's gotten, and it's quite an opportunity for him. And I also want to thank him for staying on part-time for helping us out. Much appreciation.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution 2019-147, approval of volunteer firefighter application.
Somebody like to offer that?
So,
Offered by Mr. Kosis.
Second.
Second by Ms. Renee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac? Yes. Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution 2019-148, appointment of fire police.
Somebody like to offer that? Offered by Mr. Kosis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Calhoun. Any questions?
I'd just like to thank both Mr. Peltier and Mr. Petronti for their time. Volunteers are the heart of this town, and we just really appreciate them coming aboard. Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
And Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
Resolution 2019-149, approving final change order number 1 for improvements, and Mrs. Scott, you are correct. It should read to Windsor Court.
There's a Windsor Court and Windsor Terrace. So there are two. One is good eye.
Do we need a motion
To amend it?
Should you amend that? No.
Okay, just do his recording as a change here.
Somebody like to offer that?
So,
Offered by Mr. Kosis. Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted.
And resolution 2019-150, extension of grace period for tax and sewer.
Somebody like to offer that?
Offer that.
Offered by Ms. Lewis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zajac. Any questions?
It was just nice to see that the taxes went down, albeit very little. It was nice to see. Hopefully everybody appreciates it.
Yeah. Yeah, the tax rate went down a little bit, for 2019, which is a reflection of, again, redevelopment, people improving their properties in 2017 and 18. Most of what affects it is 2018, what happens in Neptune, what goes on in Neptune City with ratables. So, roll call, please.
Mayor, if I could just remind the residents, to pay your taxes, you can come to the office. You can pay them online by credit card, and, or if we're closed, you can leave it in the, tax box outside of the Borough Hall, front doors. And, also coming for the final quarter of the year, you will be able to do an ACH. You can come to the Borough Hall and pick up the form, fill that out, and we would need a voided check, and, you would have your, taxes, both sewer sewer and regular, taken out of your account on the first of the month, at the tax quarter.
Mr. Russell, would you be able to set that up to do one or the other instead of both, if you just wanted your
Yes, sir.
contacts? Okay.
You can do both.
Okay.
Either way, sir. And that's,
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Calhoun?
Yes.
Resolution adopted, thank you. All right. Public participation. Does anybody from the public wish to be heard on any and all items? I saw this young man's hand first.
Just a quick
State
follow-up.
your name and,
I'm sorry, I'm Ted Wardell, 9 Tucker Drive. And actually, the question comes from my wife, not from me. First of all, I was glad to hear about the ASPCA capture release and so forth. I'm just wondering that the cats that are caught and neutered, spayed, whatever, were these, in any way, shape, or form, do you know if they'll be tagged?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will. They'll be, they clip it here.
Okay.
So like, which causes no pain, no problems to the cats. That's how they'll know if the issue is persistent with the cat they've already treated and one they haven't. It would also help, so before those colony, caregivers will also be able to tell which ones are part of the colony, and which new ones are not, if we want to do so, yes.
And personal note, that screaming cat is god awful. Rude.
yeah.
So,
I have one in my neighborhood that, thing lives in my house, and I actually named it Not My Cat. And everybody refers to it as Not My Cat. Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Yes, state your name.
Yes, Linda Calucci, 37. My mortgage says Windsor Court, the street sign says Avenue, so I don't know which one it is. But that's in
should be
reference
Court.
to this question. My mortgage says 37 Windsor Court, the street sign says Avenue.
I wouldn't pay it.
We'll have our,
I'll just say
all right. I would,
If
listen,
it comes up-
we'll straighten that out tomorrow. It's very possible that the sign is just wrong. We will have them check the tax map tomorrow and make sure that it's straightened out.
But my question and coming tonight was in regards to the renting of the hall of the First Aid Squad. And I understand that that's probably a great source of revenue. However, you cannot park on Windsor Court Avenue. You can't. There's no parking. They park in our driveways. You can't get in and out of the driveways. My husband says he's the Uber driver of our guests on the weekend because they have to park 5, 6, 7 blocks away, and he goes and picks them up and then puts our car back in the driveway. So this past Saturday, I also understand because it's a public building, you can't smoke in the building. So now, this Saturday, the party is in the street. With the truck blaring, 20 people smoking and drinking and eating in the street.
So what I'm gonna recommend you do is we'll speak to the chief, and we'll talk with the first aid squad. If you see something like that going on, and it's a late, pick up the phone and call.
I've only ever had to call once, it was 11 at night.
Pick up the phone and call, cause that's really the best thing to do, because,
There's also a safety issue because when there's parking on both sides of the street, Windsor becomes a one-way street. And now you've got people coming,
I
that
know
people have to
exactly
back
what
up.
you mean. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately, if somebody's parked if they're blocking your driveway, that's a different story. But if somebody's parked legally, I know we hear it a lot of times, and I'm a little, possessive of my house. I don't really have off-street parking, and people park in front of my house a lot. And, but if they're legally parked, there's not a lot we can do about it. But if they're illegally parked, or they're loud, or please pick up the phone, call. The chief would be more than happy to take care of that.
And, you don't
We'll
want
talk
to.
to the first aid
And
squad.
I understand it, that's their source of revenue.
Yeah.
But their pamphlet also says ample parking on their flyer. Ample parking to me implies a parking lot. So now you're renting something and saying you have ample parking, when in reality they have no parking.
We will speak to the rental agent over there and find out why they have ample parking. If they do, I'll ask them where it is. So, thank you. Yes.
Louise Gager, 13 Smock Street. I have some issues on Smock Street that I want to bring to the attention of the council. The first one is there has been an abandoned pickup truck, Virginia plates, sitting in front of, I think Smock Street, and the police came and checked it out. I have the plate number, but it's still sitting there 2 weeks after they checked it out. So it's Virginia plates. I don't know if anybody got any feedback from the police department of what the truck is doing there. It's just sitting there forever.
Yeah, they wouldn't notify us about things like that. We wouldn't be
Well, is it
notified.
allowed to, somebody from Virginia can just leave it?
That's something we'd have to check with we'd have the administrator, check with the chief and his patrols tomorrow.
Okay, there's also the large recurring pothole on the corner of Smock and Steiner in front of Costanza's.
Yep.
Somebody's fixing it, and
It's county. We patch it, so I know the borough patches it on occasion, but it's actually a county route, so we call them, they come down and patch it sometimes, we patch it, but we're trying to get it fixed
are you
properly.
gonna call or you want me to call? I got the one fixed on the corner of Brighton and West Sylvania, they came like that.
Oh, well then call.
Okay, there's, also behind the 7-Eleven strip mall, the lights are out. There are lights that actually are there, but they're not
But they're not
working.
on? Okay.
And the weeds in the gutters on Smock Street, talk about areas in need of redevelopment.
The weeds and
I have a photo,
of.
and it's a disgrace. In the gutters, if you can excuse me, can I give you the photo?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I drive down there all the time.
And I don't know whose job it is, whether it's the property owner.
That I don't know if it's a property owner or not,
Well,
but we will find out.
I'll tell you,
Right, tell you whose house it is.
when I walked, I came to the council meeting tonight at 6 p.m. because the community calendar said it was at 6 p.m. I walked here, so I walked back home, and while I walked back home, I went by the park and I went on Steiner Avenue across 35 from you and I. Is that the west side of Steiner?
Yes.
Okay. There's not a blade of grass in any of the curbs there. Then you come across Route 35 by the 7-Eleven, and Steiner starts to look like it's cultivating grass in the curbs. So I stopped and I asked one of the residents on the west side of Steiner who cleans their curbs, and she told me that the town comes once a week and gets rid of the weeds in the curb. So.
They better not. I don't think they're allowed to do that.
Well, who's supposed to do it? The property owner?
That I don't know. I believe it is the property owner.
Well, then can they be fined or given a warning
I
or
don't know.
something?
You can
Because
look
it
into
looks
it.
terrible.
We'll have to look at it, we'll have to see what the ordinance says, of who's actually responsible for it.
Because you see it, right? You see half of Smock Street looks clean and cared for, and then the other half that goes up to Laird Avenue looks like it belongs in a third world country somewhere. And the other last thing I have is, can the ladies on the council speak louder when they're talking? 'Cause that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I don't know why they're not.
You already went once.
Well, I don't.
All right.
I don't wanna be late for going.
Got it.
The side street of the First State Windsor Court. Up at the end, where Windsor Terrace is, I seem to recollect a few years ago, the name of that street was changed.
It's Bay Breeze Way. That last little block is Bay Breeze Way, correct?
Okay,
Yeah, that was changed
Okay.
several years ago. That from there to the
right, no, I thought you said there's Windsor Court and Windsor Terrace, and I go, there isn't any Windsor Terrace anymore, so.
Well, we're gonna
check the tax maps in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question. Andrew Brown, 69 Laird Avenue. Andrew, I don't know if you can answer this. The TNR program. What's the process? We see a stray cat, we call who?
You would call the Mountain County SBCA.
The residents would be the ones to call the
Yes.
SPCA director.
I mean, you can call the borough and we can give you the number,
Well,
or you
I
can look it
know,
up, but
well,
yeah.
I know if there's a problem, usually you had to call the police department. I'm sure the police department doesn't want to be contaminated with fix the cat.
Well, I mean, the Mountain County SBA is a legal organization,
No, no, no,
so
I
you can call them directly.
I'm gonna call you, come fix my cat.
Well,
if a resident does call the police department, it goes right to our dispatch, and the dispatch will call SPCA.
And as Mr. Russell just reminded me, when we do finally sign this contract with the Montgomery County SPCA, Chief Lucicia was willing to actually come and speak to residents exactly what this details and what they need to do and who they can contact and how.
Okay, because I know the question's gonna come up. Who do you call?
Right.
Who's responsible for trapping the cat? Who's responsible for getting?
I can tell you the residents are not responsible.
That's what I'm saying. Are
Yeah.
they gonna provide the traps and then just?
No, they will come and trap them,
them.
so they, actually, that was one of these where I said, I don't want residents doing anything. He said, we will come, we will trap, we will take care of everything. All they gotta do is make a phone call.
So, when, Chief Lucitra's gonna be here, we'll make sure that, you know, it's on the agenda and
Yeah.
listen, so anybody can come, and if you get the opportunity, bring your cat. I'm bringing not my cat.
Is it on an as-needed basis, or are they gonna like come every like couple of weeks, or is it simply on?
They will patrol as well.
Oh, really?
They will come to, I don't know how often that we didn't discuss. They will come to, but for the most part, it's gonna be from phone calls from residents.
Okay.
We're going to give them areas that we already knew about,
Mhm.
so they're gonna start in those areas as soon as we get this going. And then the calls can, you know, that will be calls also to tell us if there's areas that we don't already know about.
And the contract we entered in is actually, limits at 100 cats, but he said towns this size never seem to exceed 60 to 65. He says, I've never seen it exceed
Just sounds like
65,
too
so
much.
So what happens if, let's say, it does exceed the 100 cats?
they go to your house.
Just
kidding. You'll have a whole bunch of
I'll drop them
cats.
off at the beach.
Not my cat.
If it exceeds the 100,
Yeah, I mean, do they just charge you more?
I guess it would be up to this governing body, because we would have to spend more money, so we would have to decide as a governing body whether or not we want to spend more money to increase what they do. But, I mean, you know,
Yeah, I mean, is that
the
100
chief let me believe that that's not gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
Maybe we keep it short now,
Thank
instead
you.
of heads, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
I have a question about the TNR. Do they return the cats to the same place?
Yes, they do. Unless they're kittens, then they're gonna try and adopt them out, or if they're young and friendly where they can still be adopted, but otherwise, yes, they'll be brought back to where they were.
Because we have experience with this. I used to work at Essex County Hospital up in Cedar Grove, and people would drop off their cats that they no longer wanted. So then we had a serious stray cat, feral cat population problem. They came and they trapped all the cats and they took them away. They didn't return them, and guess what happened? We had rats hopping through the ground. We had a serious
Yeah,
rodent
no, I can
problem
imagine.
as a result.
Well, that was one of the things that the chief did say, is that these cats do help keep the varmint population down as well, so they do serve a benefit to the community.
I used to see a lot of field mice, but rats, I don't see them anymore, but hopefully they'll bring them back.
It's probably not my cat. Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Yes.
Danny Pappas, captain of the Neptune City First. I do know that we do, when we rent out, it does say on-street parking only. But maybe we can work with the borough to.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
The other thing is we have a fundraiser for equipment at our first aid building, September 25th. It's wine, cheese, and a medium. So you can go on our website and purchase tickets. They're going extremely fast. Come join us.
Was it the?
Say the date again.
25th.
September 25th.
What time?
Doors open at 6, it's from 7 to 9, it's $40 a person. We're providing the wine cheese, you can also bring your own. Oh my gosh. And then the medium, 100 people max, so it's going really fast.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hold on a minute. Just wanna make a reminder, the road sweeper will be going through town this week, so if you have a car parked in the street, park it in the driveway, so they can do a thorough job.
That might be unreachable.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to call an Administration of Justice Committee meeting, Thursday, August 22nd at 6 p.m.
And then just two quick things I had. So the business administrator and the chief and I are working on Battle of the Badges, which is going to be a softball game between all the first responders. We're looking at the 28th of September. It's going to be as far as food trucks and not etched in stone. Nothing's etched in stone. It's all preliminary at this point.
Okay.
And then the other thing I want to just make you guys aware of, and we can go ahead and pass these down. There's one for everybody, just to give you an idea of where we're going with participatory budgeting. I've got an outline there that I prepared. I've already spoken with a few residents that want to be part of the committee. So we will have a meeting sometime over the next week or so, and I should have an update for you guys at the next meeting. That's where we're going with it.
Thank you. Now I need a motion to adjourn.
Wait, I have a
Hold on.
quick question. Jen Coombs, Citizen Media. How did the concert go on Saturday? I didn't have a
Very
chance.
good. Board of Recreation does a great job. They fundraise. They're a great group of residents, and they've been putting these concerts on for years. And they went fantastic. Thank you. How about now, motion to adjourn? Offered by Mr. Wardell. Second by Mrs. Lewis. All in favor? Aye. Those who want to stay?
No.
We are adjourned.